Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next episode of WTALKS. It's fantastic to be here. I'm your host, John Mark, WeWalk's head of R&D. As always, I'm joined with co-host Kurshat, who is WeWalk co-founder. Kurshat, say hi.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be with you again with a new episode of W Talks. And today we are having Paul Bepey from BBC. Welcome, Paul.
Yes, Paul, please
Hi,
introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself, what you do at the BBC, and what got you into it.
Excellent. So firstly, thanks everybody, and thanks to the guys at WeWalk for the invite. I'm Paul Bepey, and I'm the Assistive Technology lead for the BBC. So in short, that means that I head up the service that ensures that all technology and services are accessible to our staff. So I'm visually impaired myself, and I run a small team that kind of sits across all of the technology aspects, from procurement to deployment, service design. So, for example, I work with our our IT outsource providers, the service providers who provide our access to work contract, just to ensure that we create as accessible, inclusive workplace as possible. I didn't actually intend to get into accessibility. I stumbled into it completely by accident. So my background was in kind of like IT support and sort of web development, and I think I just got to the point as a visually impaired person where I was using technology that was completely inaccessible. Everything was kind of like being driven by mouse commands and that kind of thing. And I think I had this bit of a thing one day, and I was like, well, I can either not do anything about it and keep using these kinds of inaccessible technologies that make it impossible for me to do my job, or I can make a difference, or try and make a difference, and try and actually help and educate people to create sort of more accessible technology and working environments. So yeah, that's me.
That's really interesting. I always find it interesting how almost all our speakers say they never really intended to get into accessible tech, but once they realized just how inaccessible many things were,
yeah, absolutely,
like, you just got to do it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and that's kind of, and then once you get into it, you obviously, you get the bug for making things accessible and actually continuing that journey. I think one of the best things is actually watching a supplier who maybe doesn't know about accessibility or how to create an inclusive environment, and you watch them kind of start to create an inaccessible product, and you talk to them about inclusive design, the various principles around accessibility, the kind of things that they need to do to ensure that something is accessible, and you watch it grow, and then or hopefully you come out with this really accessible product that, because if it's accessible to use a screen reader, or say something like Dragon, then that's it. It's accessible to everybody. It just makes really good business sense. And it doesn't actually cost anything.
I couldn't agree more. You just get more people to use your product, and if you make it accessible for anyone, if you can make it accessible for someone that's visually impaired, for instance, or someone that's disabled, chances are you've improved usability for everyone. So why not?
Exactly, and it's about the usability as well. I mean, if it's accessible, it's usable. So
exactly,
it's yeah.
So that leads me on actually very nicely onto my first question, which is just how diverse is your job? I mean, what tend to be the demographics at the BBC? What tech do you tend to deploy?
So my job is actually quite diverse. It takes me through through quite a few areas. So I do the whole kind of accessible service design piece, ensuring that accessibility is considered and implemented as part of procurement, ensuring that contracts are drawn up with accessibility in mind, so it's not just an afterthought, which is really important to an organisation like the BBC. So that it means that we can get a journalist in who can literally hit the ground and do their job from day one, rather than kind of like sitting there trying to use a piece of inaccessible technology because we need to get an update or some custom code written for it, which doesn't do doesn't do their career any good. I've also worked on creating accessible TV desks and the gallery operating software. So where you operate everything from the studio gallery, and then there's the whole assistive tech piece. So kind of recommending the catalogue of assistive technology that we use within the BBC, which contains all of the various core technologies you would find. So screen readers, magnification, voice commands, various pieces of hardware, switches, braille displays, braille embossers, to ensure that people can do their job.
And what tends to be the most common piece of assistive tech that you tend to find at the BBC? Is it involving visual impairment? Is it dexterity? Is it hearing? What is it?
So generally, I would say our most common deployment for assistive technology would be around individuals with neurodiverse conditions. So that could be things like Read and Write Gold, Claro, Dragon. Those, I would say they're the ones that are mainly used in the BBC, or that they have the highest sort of like use numbers. And then you come down to magnification, and then sort of screen reader users, say, such as JAWS, VoiceOver. But there are also other pieces of technology that kind of get deployed just around the organization.
Fascinating. It's almost like the most common technology is the biggest.
Yeah. So I would say the most common is the stuff that helps with neurodiversity. Then going down from that, you've got magnification, and then sort of screen readers after that, which interestingly, they're the ones that it's the screen reader that we need to do the most work with to ensure that things are compatible. So it may have, or it may appear to have, the lowest number of users, but you have to put a whole lot more into the design process when you're procuring an application or designing an internal application or service to ensure that it's going to work with that piece of technology.
Paul, you are really giving perfect accessibility service, and I'm coming with the tough question. Why don't we have blind journalists? Maybe we have, but at least I don't know. So, and my other part of the question is, do you feel a visually impaired journalist can be as effective as sighted journalist?
Okay, so I'm going to flip that question if it's okay, and I'm going to start with the last bit first. Absolutely, a visually impaired journalist can be as effective, if not more effective, than a sighted journalist. It depends on how they utilize their environment and the technology and the services that they have access to provide any kind of level of support that they need. So, say for example, it's perfectly possible to get a visually. Sorry, my Twitter, my phone just read something from Twitter. Sorry about that. So it's all about it's possible to get like a visually impaired journalist to read something from an auto cue on a braille display, so that they can follow sort of everything that's on screen and present that to the same, if not better quality than a sighted journalist can.
I'd actually have to challenge that even, Kürşad, because we know actually quite a few blind journalists. We have Lucy Edwards. I mean, she does some really amazing stuff, not just for the BBC and BBC Click. She's also got her own YouTube channel where she talks about, as a visually impaired person, educating the rest of the visually impaired community. How do you carry out day-to-day lives, from everything from dating to cooking to whatever. And I know, Paul, I mean, tell us more about the visually impaired journalists at the BBC.
Yeah, so we've also got Sean Dilley, who he's one of our journalists who works on programs such as Panorama. We've obviously got Gary O'Donoghue, the political journalist, Manny, who does sports. There is, we've got quite a few others as well, who work on sort of like, you know, various things. So yeah.
And I mean, do you feel with the right tech, I mean, in the future, do you feel like we can get even more blind journalists on board?
I feel that if we develop and create the technology in the right way, we absolutely can. I don't think that's not a problem at all. And the BBC currently we operate journalism trainee schemes, details of which are available on bbc.co.uk, and they give kind of all of the information on how people can apply to that. We do regularly get visually impaired journalists apply for that, and you know, most of whom are successful in kind of like keeping a career at the BBC.
And Paul, what assistive tech do you actually use to carry out your job on a day-to-day basis?
So for my job, I generally use either a Windows laptop with a dual screen reader, which obviously tells me everything that's on my screen, reads out all my content to me, a braille display, which I'm using now, so I can kind of like read notes and documents and things like that. Obviously my iPad, which is, you know, it has the same kind of setup. So I've got, you know, voice activation stuff, obviously my copy of VoiceOver, which is built into the operating system. And that also works on my braille display. And then kind of like outside the workplace, I use quite a few. Some of it's considered assistive tech, some of it isn't. So for example, I do a lot of stuff with kind of like voice technology. So I'm going to try not to set them off now. So obviously Google Home and Alexa, who hasn't actually gone off. And you know, I use those around the house, as well as Siri for timers and kind of like reading recipes and content and stuff like that. And then out and about, I use kind of accessible GPS, so things like Blind Square, as well as Apple Maps, Google Maps, stuff like that. And then obviously, last but not least, I use WeWalk.
And tell us more about WeWalk. Actually, it's been almost a year now, I think, since we last. It's been more than a year.
Yeah, it's been quite a while, isn't it? So, I mean, WeWalk for me is actually it's quite invaluable, really. So I go quite a few places with my young daughter, and obviously the smart navigation of cane gets me to places that I need to go to. So it gives the instructions and stuff. If I'm getting too close to an object, the cane will vibrate so that I know that I need to steer away from something or steer her away from it, or there's a low overhanging branch or tree coming up. And then, as we were discussing earlier, there's the torch function. So, which obviously I haven't used as much recently because nights are getting lighter and stuff. But I mean, back in the winter, sort of like November, December time, obviously walking a child home from school in the dark is pretty dangerous for anybody. So the torch function on the cane was pretty invaluable. It enabled her to see where she was going, and it just made the whole journey a lot easier, really.
Paul, would you accept a job as a WeWalk salesman? I mean, I really
done.
I have a question for Kürşad, actually, and I'd like to hear Kürşad's opinion on this. Kürşad, how accessible is television in Turkey? How accessible is just media in Turkey in general?
Perfect question. Actually, I wasn't expecting this question because we prepared our questions for our guests, but Jean-Marc, you made me right now surprised. Thank you for this question. In Turkey, in recent years, accessibility perspective is getting higher, and TV channels has started to provide audio descripted TV series or movies or for visually impaired people, as well as as well. So they are providing subtitle or sign language with their TV series or movies. Also, cable TVs cable TVs having some special timeline for disabled viewers, and also when we come to their applications, it's getting more accessible because this understanding is affecting all their job as well. However, there's still way to go there. So maybe I should ask the situation for the BBC as well. How does the BBC make its content to its all users?
Okay, so obviously that's that question covers quite a range of services. So if we start off with TV first, obviously the content that's created is audio described. I don't know I can't remember the actual percentage of audio described content from the top of my head, but it's quite high. Everything also has subtitles and kind of like transcription. With regards to applications and websites, any mobile content created follows the BBC's mobile accessibility guidelines. All of our websites conform to the BBC web accessibility guidelines, so they can all be found on bbc.co.uk, and to ensure that is as accessible as possible for external content, they have access to what's known as an accessibility champions network. So people kind of train up in accessibility as well as their so it kind of like becomes they do it as well as their kind of like current post. So there'll be like a champion for a I don't know, so let's say for example news or iPlayer. All of those areas have accessibility champions who kind of like work with the developers to ensure that anything created is accessible and works for everybody at release. Does that answer your question?
It does, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for answer. Also, I would like to add one more thing to your question, Jean-Marc, you asked me. I answered your question in terms of TV channels. However, for the movie theaters, as WeWalk team, we have been developing various technologies for the visually impaired for many years, almost 10 years. And before the WeWalk, we have developed audio description technology for the movie theaters. It's an application, and we published this application in 2014, 6 years ago. And visually impaired people, when they go to movie theaters, they can turn on their application, and this application can synchronize with the sound of the movie, and it provides the audio description at the silent scenes. And so far, we have published more than 200 audio descripted movies in movie theaters. And also we are making some partnerships with the festivals as well, and that's why we are making more accessible festivals for the visually impaired as well. So,
funnily enough, when I started with WeWalk almost 2 years ago now, when I first met Gökhan, our other co-founder in London, remember that was the first thing he showed me, because WeWalk was still in prototype. There wasn't really much to see. And I remember when he opened up his laptop and just started playing a movie, and just got his phone and I just synced to it. My mind was absolutely blown, because it's so simple and so usable. Why don't we have more of that? Obviously, there's a cost associated with larger production houses, integrating that sort of technology, but it's so simple and it just so easy.
I think, did we look at that when you came to Egham? I'm pretty sure we did, didn't we? Yeah, I'm pretty sure we did a demo of it, yeah.
So yeah, it's just simple. Now, actually, speaking of accessibility champions, I have a bit of an interesting question for you. Now, I did some reading, and I know that you chair the BBC Accessibility Forum. I am very, very curious to know what have been some of the most interesting or contentious topics of debates that you've had, or anything interesting, really.
Okay, so I should start by saying I was chair until last year, and then I'd done my term, so I had to hand over to somebody else. However, I'm still part of the staff forum. So some of the things that we worked on while I was chair, and obviously we've continued doing since. Obviously, the BBC did a huge push in around 2017, 2018 to increase its number of employees with disabilities. So these were called, I think they were called culture and progression work streams at the time. And obviously various recommendations were published, which are freely available on the BBC website. So our network basically worked with the exec level of the organisation, and actually kind of got those helped to draw those recommendations up, and then had like regular meetings and workshops and stuff to ensure that they actually that the recommendations that were published in the report were able to kind of like happen and be progressed. We've also, for the last 2 or 3 years, run events on International Day of Disability, which is usually around the first week in December. So 2019, I think it was Tuesday the 3rd. And then we've done partnership events with all of the other broadcasters, so Channel 5, Channel 4, pretty sure Sky were involved, ITV, and we all came together and kind of discussed the whole issue of disability portrayal on and off screen, and had various presenters and people coming and giving workshops. So they were attended in London and Salford, and kind of like streamed across the country. So they were pretty successful. We're also a voice for our employees who have disabilities. So anything is on the table. People can kind of talk to us about whatever they need to, and then we can take that with the relevant parts of the organisation.
Fascinating. I mean, it's always good to have that staff voice. There are so many places. And this is, I guess, not mainly in the UK, but where I used to study and then grow up. There's always been this sort of push of, we know what's best for you. We have a guideline. This tech work for you, so you just take that tech and you move along. Whereas in reality, never that simple. You have to.
That you can't use the one size fits all model, and that's what we try and do with our technology. I mean, obviously we've got core products that we support. So I mean, I think, as I said earlier, JAWS, Dragon, sort of Zoom text, things like that. But if somebody comes into the organization and they have a need to use a specific piece of technology for whatever reason, obviously we can't guarantee that will work. But what we can do is guarantee that we will look at it, and if it is doable, then we'll look at licensing that piece of technology or piece of hardware, or whatever it is, and getting that in so that whichever employee needs it can use it, and then that will be added to the catalog as either like a site license or like a manual install, or however we need to do it. We look at it on a case-by-case basis.
I think an interesting.
I think one thing we haven't touched on is we've also done quite a few things for Global Accessibility Awareness Day, which is the 3rd Thursday in May. So obviously, because of COVID and stuff, we didn't do one this year, but we've done some pretty successful events in the past. We certainly did a really successful one last year, and again, details of that are presentations and stuff can be seen online. So yeah.
Yes. I was just going to give the analogy of almost looking at it like a mobile phone for accessible tech, where for a normally sighted user, you give them a phone, 100% of that fundamental tech is usable. But if you give a phone to a visually impaired person, that tech is only 50% of the equation. There's never just a set up and go, and then that next 50%, it's quite the hard 50% to get sometimes. But when you get it right, you unlock so much potential. It's unreal.
You do, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And one last question, actually, and this is for both Kürşad and yourself, because we're all very different. I mean, I still am partially sighted. I'm very low vision, but I still have just enough to be able to enjoy TV. But I'm curious to hear from yourself and Kürşad, what would both of you want to see in the future of broadcasting? What do you feel would be that aha solution for yourself personally to just make you enjoy your content more?
Yeah, Paul, please be the first.
I knew you were going to say that. Thanks for that. I think one of the things that I would really like to see in the future is authentic portrayal of disability. So, you know, disabled actors playing disabled characters. I mean, how many times have, you know, I think like we were saying earlier, how many times have you seen a VI person or somebody in a wheelchair played by somebody who doesn't have a disability? And I think that's one thing that the industry really needs to change, and actually get a realistic representation of that portrayal on, you know, on and off screen. Yeah,
definitely, Paul. I would answer totally like you, and I totally agree with you. Right now, the industry likes, you know, they are telling, for example, it's just as an example, they are telling a story of a woman without having a woman character, you know, actors.
Yeah.
So it's quite funny, and that's why. And also, I have to accept that, you know, they're almost like a blind. You know, when I watched the Al Pacino in Sense of a Woman, I have to accept that he's almost like a blind. But this is the reality. He is not a real and total blind. So
yeah,
that's why I agree with you. I'm so excited with this idea.
I think it's something that's improving. You know, we are obviously getting you know, more sort of disabled talent is coming into the industry. But personally, and obviously, you know, these views are my own. I do think that we, you know, we've got a lot of work to do to actually bring this to where it needs to be.
So I was just gonna say, I was gonna conclude. So Michael Bay, anyone out there, if you need visually impaired actors, you've got your guys right here, 3 of us. Ready to go tomorrow.
Yep, definitely.
It has been an absolute pleasure, Paul. Really loved your very unique perspective. I mean, we've had so many people from tech, but they've been in tech companies, whereas here we're talking about tech and broadcasting, which is, you know, very. So I've had an amazing time. Kürşad, sorry for throwing you in those curveball questions, but that's how we do it at WTALKS. We like to keep things keep you on your toes.
Please prepare yourself for the next episode. You know, I will come with my questions to you.
Right, that's everyone watching now. Better tune into the next episode. It's me and Kürşad, just 1v1 to see.
Excellent.
But thanks again, and please.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yep, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, definitely.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.